struggling single dad saved a woman from a cliff. She turned out to be a secret billionaire CEO. Have you ever believed that a single act of kindness could change the entire course of a life? What if that life was your own? In the quiet forests of Oregon, a struggling single father saves a woman from falling off a cliff, only to discover she's a billionaire CEO hiding from a world that nearly broke her. But what begins as a chance encounter soon becomes a story of healing, unexpected love, and the kind of second chances that only show up when we least expect them. If you're someone who believes in the quiet power of goodness, if you've ever needed a reminder that love can find us, even in the most unlikely places, this story is for you. Before we begin, if stories like this warm your heart, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next one. Now sit back, take a breath, and let's step into the story of the billionaire in the pines. The sky over Pine Hollow was painted in soft pastels that morning. Lavender, pale gold, and streaks of dusty rose brushing against the tips of the pines. Ben Carter stood at the edge of the old footbridge near the northern trail, his breath rising in small clouds. With one hand adjusting the straps of his tool belt and the other clutching a half-empty thermos, he squinted toward the jagged ridgeline above. He had made this hike hundreds of times, but something about the silence today felt uneasy. Then came the sound that would change everything. A scream. It wasn't sharp or panicked. It was startled, brief, and terrifyingly close. Ben froze. The scream echoed off the cliffs, followed by the unmistakable crunch of shifting gravel. He dropped his thermos and ran. His boots thudded against the frozen soil as he sprinted up the narrow trail, heart pounding in rhythm with his steps. The pines gave way to a steep bend overlooking a rocky outcrop, and there, just beyond the ledge, he saw a hand clinging to a root. "Hang on!" he shouted, skidding to the edge. A woman dangled precariously, her legs scrambling for footing against the crumbling slope. Her face was pale, framed by dark chestnut hair that had escaped a wool cap. One of her hiking boots had come off. She looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes. I I can't hold," she gasped. Ben didn't waste time. He knelt, bracing himself with one foot hooked around a tree trunk, and reached down. "Give me your hand. Now!" She hesitated, just a split second, but it was long enough for the root to groan ominously beneath her fingers. "Trust me," he urged. She reached, their hands connected, his grip firm and calloused, hers trembling and cold. With a grunt, Ben pulled. Every muscle in his body burned as he hauled her inch by inch up the slope until she collapsed against him, breathless and shaking. They both lay on the frozen ground for a moment, chest to chest, the only sound between them their heavy breathing. "Are you hurt?" he asked, still gripping her forearm. She shook her head weakly. I don't think so. Just rattled." He helped her sit up and looked her over quickly. A few scrapes on her palms, a torn sleeve, dirt streaked across her cheek, but nothing broken. "Your boot's gone," he said. She blinked, still dazed. I didn't think anyone else would be out here. You're lucky I was. That root wouldn't have held much longer." "I know," she murmured, brushing hair from her face. Her voice was low, cultured, with the kind of refinement that didn't usually show up in Pine Hollow. "Thank you." Ben offered a short nod. "Come on, let's get you somewhere warm. There's a camp not far from here." She winced as she stood, favoring one foot. "I'm Lexi." He paused. Ben. Ben Carter." She didn't offer a last name, and he didn't ask. The trail back was slow. Ben gave her his extra glove and steadied her by the elbow when she stumbled. He didn't push with questions, though curiosity nipped at him like the morning wind. By the time they reached the rustic cabins nestled in a clearing of frosted evergreens, the sun had risen higher, casting golden light over the shingled roofs and curling smoke chimneys. Pine Hollow Campground was closed for the season, but Ben kept it up during winter. Repairs, firewood, the occasional guest. He guided her to the smallest cabin, one that hadn't been used in years but was still clean. He lit the stove and poured water into a kettle from the hand pump jug. "Sit," he said gently, gesturing to the rocking chair by the fire. "Warm up. I'll grab a blanket." She obeyed without protest, pulling her jacket tighter as she stared into the flickering flames. There was a haunted stillness in her gaze, the kind Ben recognized in people who had seen more than they were ready to talk about. He returned with a wool blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders. "You want to see a doctor? There's a clinic down in town." She shook her head quickly. "No, I'll be fine. Just tired." Ben hesitated. There was something about the way she said it. Not tired from the fall, but tired of something else. Something bigger. "All right," he said. "You can rest here for now. We've got plenty of space." Her eyes snapped to his. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," he replied simply. "Besides, Em'll be thrilled. We don't get many visitors this time of year." "Emma?" "My daughter, she's 7. Full of questions, be warned." Lexi gave a faint smile, the first flicker of warmth on her face since the fall. "Sounds like someone I could use right now." Ben met her gaze, and for a beat they just looked at each other. Two strangers connected by chance, or maybe something more. Outside, a wind brushed the trees, but inside that little cabin, something quiet and unexpected had taken root. A beginning neither of them could yet see coming. The fire crackled softly, casting amber shadows on the pinewood walls. Lexi sat motionless in the rocking chair, a ceramic mug of warm tea cradled between her palms. She hadn't said much in the past half hour, but her eyes, though calm on the surface, were busy searching every corner of the small cabin, as if memorizing the contours of a life she wasn't meant to live. Ben moved quietly around the room, checking the window latches and laying a few more logs near the hearth. He didn't hover, didn't question, just worked with a kind of unspoken grace, something Lexi hadn't witnessed in a long time. Outside, Pine Hollow whispered in its winter hush. The wind rustled lightly through snow-dusted boughs, and a red cardinal darted past the window like a sudden thought. "You fix this place up yourself?" Lexi asked softly. Ben turned, surprised to hear her speak. "Most of it, yeah. Built half the cabins with my dad before he passed. I keep them going. Folks don't think about summer when it's 32 degrees out, but these places need love year-round." Lexi nodded, then looked down at her tea. "It's beautiful here. Peaceful, too. That's why I stay." She didn't respond to that, but her lips tightened just a little, like someone resisting the pull of memory. Ben recognized the look. He'd seen it in the mirror enough after his wife died. People carried sorrow differently, but it always showed in the silence. "You hungry?" he asked. She shook her head. "Just tired." "Well, you're welcome to rest here for as long as you need. This cabin's not in use, and I'm not expecting guests. I can pay." Ben shook his head. "Not necessary." Lexi raised a brow. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said. "You didn't scream when I pulled you up. That counts for something." That drew a faint smile, quick and reluctant. "That's a strange metric. I'm a strange guy." She studied him for a moment. There was no flirtation in his tone, no angle, just simple kindness. It disarmed her more than any sharp wit or grand gesture ever had. Later that afternoon, Lexi ventured out of the cabin. The pain in her ankle had dulled to a manageable ache, and Ben lent her a walking stick carved from a cedar branch. The path outside was lightly dusted with snow but manageable. She followed the faint trail toward the communal area Ben had mentioned. An open clearing surrounded by 6 cabins, a small picnic shelter, and a modest swing set half buried in white. There, near the swings, stood a little girl in a purple knit hat and snow boots far too big for her. She spotted Lexi immediately. "Are you the lady my daddy saved?" Lexi blinked. "I guess I am." The girl marched over, examining her from head to toe with unfiltered curiosity. "You don't look like you fell off a mountain." "I didn't fall," Lexi corrected gently. "I slipped. There's a difference." "I'm Emma," the girl announced, clearly unimpressed by the nuance. "I'm 7 3/4. Do you know how to make hot cocoa without the powder lumps?" "Only the fancy kind," Lexi replied, bemused. Emma tilted her head. "That's good. Daddy burns cocoa, even the microwave kind." Lexi laughed, an honest, surprised sound that startled even her. "Well, maybe I can teach him." "You should stay." "People never stay. It makes Daddy sad sometimes." That wiped the smile right off her face. Lexi crouched slowly, careful of her ankle, and looked Emma in the eye. "That's a very grown-up thing to say." "I'm good at those," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Want to come meet my snow frog?" "Snow frog?" "He's frozen. But he's just sleeping. Lexi followed the girl to a small mound of snow where two twigs and a rock suggested some artistic interpretation of a frog. It was lopsided and sweet and completely ridiculous. Somehow her throat tightened at the sight. I think he's lucky, Lexi whispered. Emma beamed. He likes you. By sundown, Lexi was back in the cabin with her ankle elevated and a plate of grilled cheese beside her. Ben had offered to make soup, but confessed it would probably end in tragedy. She accepted the sandwich with quiet amusement. You and Emma seem to hit it off, Ben said, sipping his coffee across the table. She's special. She is. Saved me more than I saved her. Most days. Lexi looked at him thoughtfully. You raised her alone? He nodded. Since she was 2. I'm sorry. Thanks, it's been 5 years. Doesn't get easier. You just get better at carrying it. Lexi let the silence settle between them, not wanting to fill it with meaningless platitudes. Grief didn't need comfort as much as it needed recognition. She understood that all too well. Emma told me people don't stay here long, she said at last. Mostly hikers, summer travelers, people chasing something or running from something. And you? Ben gave a tired smile. I stopped chasing a while ago. Lexi nodded. I think I have too. That confession surprised even her, but it was true. Something about this place, the crisp air, the warmth of the fire, the tiny girl with big boots, had unraveled her defenses faster than she'd imagined. I can help, she said suddenly. Around the camp. Cleaning, repairs, whatever you need. Ben blinked. You don't have to. I know, she said, but I want to. I'm good with logistics, project planning, schedules. He chuckled. Sounds like you ran a resort or something. Lexi smiled, careful not to let the truth crack through. Something like that. That night, as the wind whistled low through the trees, Lexi lay on the small bed in the corner of the cabin, eyes wide open. The ceiling above her was knotted pine, rough and imperfect, but sturdy. She had no cell service, no headlines, no board meetings. For the first time in years, there was no one telling her who she needed to be. And for once, that didn't feel like loss. It felt like grace. The next morning broke clear and cold, with pale sunlight filtering through the treetops. Lexi stood by the cabin window, wrapped in one of Ben's extra flannel shirts. It hung loosely on her frame, but the weight of it was oddly comforting, like she'd been lent a piece of someone else's piece. She watched as Ben and Emma trudged through the snow toward the woodshed, Emma hopping from one boot print to the next. Lexi felt something she hadn't in a long time. Stillness without pressure. There were no meetings waiting, no headlines shouting her name, no investors demanding her time. Just trees, just quiet, just breath. And a little girl who had crept under her skin faster than any strategy or deal ever had. Lexi turned away from the window, trying not to think too much. But it was impossible. There was something both soothing and dangerous about Pine Hollow, like walking barefoot into water you didn't know was deep. Later that afternoon, Ben asked if she'd watch Emma while he went into town to pick up supplies. Just for an hour or two, he said, brushing snow off his coat. She likes you, and she's been begging me to teach her how to make your cocoa. Lexi hesitated. Are you sure? Absolutely. And she already asked if you could tuck her in tonight, so you might as well surrender now. Lexi laughed, a soft, disbelieving sound. All right, but I'm not reading her any of those princess books with talking teacups. She's into dinosaurs this month, Ben said, amused. You'll be fine. The hour passed quickly. Emma was a whirlwind of ideas, turning pine cones into fairy houses, folding socks into taco babies, and attempting to braid Lexi's hair with roughly the same finesse as a squirrel assembling a bird's nest. Lexi hadn't laughed this much in years. After dinner, they sat together on the rug near the fireplace. Emma nestled into Lexi's side with a worn book about fossils in her lap. Did you ever dig up bones when you were a kid? Emma asked, looking up at her. Lexi shook her head. I grew up in a city. The only bones I saw came from overpriced rotisserie chickens. Emma giggled. We should go looking sometime. Maybe we'll find a T-Rex. I'd settle for a pine cone that doesn't poke my ribs when I sit on it. Emma leaned her head against Lexi's shoulder, yawning. You're really good at this. At what? Being a mom. Lexi froze. It wasn't the kind of thing a child said to be polite. It came from someplace honest and unfiltered. The kind of truth only kids knew how to drop into your lap without warning. "I'm not your mom, sweetheart," Lexi said gently, her voice catching slightly. "I know," Emma mumbled sleepily, "but I kind of wish you were." And with that, she closed her eyes and drifted off. Lexi sat there stunned, her arms wrapped around a child who didn't belong to her, but felt like she did. Something inside her cracked. Not the kind of break that hurt, but the kind that let light in. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. She had built towers and led empires, but never in all her life had someone looked at her like she was home. She didn't know whether to cry or hold on tighter. When Ben returned, he found them curled up on the rug, Emma fast asleep, Lexi wide awake, staring at the fire like it held all the answers she couldn't reach. "She out?" he whispered, setting the groceries down. "Like a light," Lexi said, brushing a strand of hair from Emma's forehead. Ben smiled, watching them a moment longer before gently lifting Emma into his arms. "She said something before she fell asleep," Lexi said quietly, standing. "Oh?" Lexi hesitated. "She said I was good at being a mom, then said she wished I was hers." Ben stopped mid-step, Emma's head resting against his shoulder. He turned to Lexi. "She misses having that, a woman around, a softness." "I'm not sure I'm qualified to be that softness," Lexi whispered. Ben met her eyes. "You're more qualified than you think." They stood in the small kitchen as the fire crackled low in the next room. Outside, night had settled like a heavy quilt over the forest. "You ever have kids in your life?" he asked gently. Lexi shook her head. "Never made time for it. Didn't think I was built for it, honestly." Ben leaned against the counter. "And now?" Lexi looked down at her hands. "Now I'm confused." He chuckled softly. "Welcome to the club." She looked up at him then. Really looked. There was something in his eyes, a quiet steadiness, that made her feel grounded in a way nothing else ever had. "I should probably head back to my cabin," she said. Ben didn't argue. "I'll walk you." They stepped out into the cold, the snow crunching beneath their boots. The stars were bright tonight, scattered across the sky like broken glass on black velvet. At the cabin door, Lexi paused. "Thank you for letting me stay, for not asking too many questions." Ben shrugged. "Sometimes the best answers come when no one's pushing for them." Lexi nodded. "She's a remarkable little girl. She takes after her mom, strong, stubborn, full of life." Lexi smiled, then turned to go inside, but paused. "I wasn't expecting this," she said softly. "Neither was I." A beat of silence. Then she opened the door and stepped in, the warm light spilling over her as it closed behind her. Inside, Lexi leaned against the door for a long moment, heart thudding. She didn't know what was happening between her and Ben, or her and Emma, but it scared her in a way nothing in the business world ever had, because it was real, because it asked for nothing and gave everything. And for the first time in years, Lexi wondered if maybe, just maybe, she wasn't running away anymore. She was being called home. Spring thaw came early to Pine Hollow that year. The snow receded in patches like a tired guest overstaying its welcome, revealing mossy earth, budding branches, and the delicate green blush of wildflowers reawakening beneath the pines. It was the kind of morning that made people believe in second chances. Ben stood at the edge of the meadow near the lake, a checkered blanket tucked under one arm and a basket in the other. Lexi followed a few paces behind, her ankle still slightly stiff but healing well. "Are we seriously having a picnic in 39-degree weather?" she asked with mock skepticism. Ben chuckled. "Trust me, this is warm for March." Lexi arched an eyebrow. "You know, in the city, we wait until at least 65, and preferably with a rooftop bar involved." "Well," he said, laying the blanket down beside the lake, "around here, we trade rooftop bars for loons and pine scent. Fewer cocktails, more peace." Lexi looked out across the still water. The surface shimmered under soft sunlight, ripples spreading like whispered secrets. "I can't argue with that." They sat together, backs propped against a fallen log, as Ben unpacked a modest lunch. Cold roast chicken, sliced apples, cheddar cubes, and Emma's idea of gourmet. Mini marshmallows for dessert. "She insisted," Ben said, shaking his head as he pulled out the little bag. "Said you deserve something sweet." "Sirrum," Lexi smiled. "She's not wrong." They ate in easy silence, occasionally pointing out the birds overhead or the slow melt of snow on the far shore. It wasn't glamorous, but it was grounding, and grounding was something Lexi had never known she needed. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a while. Ben glanced over. "Sure. Do you ever regret staying? In Pine Hollow?" She nodded. He took a long moment before answering. "Sometimes, not because I don't love it here, because I do. But there are moments when I wonder who I would have been if I hadn't put everything on hold." Lexi studied him, her fingers idly tracing a knot in the log behind them. "I get that," she said, "except I did the opposite. I put everything else on hold to chase what I thought mattered." Ben looked at her gently. "And did it matter?" she echoed. "It did. For a while. Until it didn't." He waited, sensing there was more. Lexi sighed. "I started with nothing. Worked 3 jobs in college. Built a brand from the ground up. People admired me. Investors called me a genius. I was on the cover of Forbes by 32. "That's impressive," he said sincerely. "I thought so too. Until I realized no one really knew me. Not even the people who claimed to love me." Ben didn't interrupt. He just let her keep going. "There was someone," she continued quietly. "A man. Older, brilliant, charming. He said he believed in me when no one else did. We built everything together. Then when I pushed back on a merger that would have doubled our value but compromised our ethics, he proposed." Ben blinked. "Wait, proposed as in marriage?" Lexi nodded. "With a ring in one hand and a pen in the other. Said if I married him, the board would back me. Said it would secure our empire." Ben let out a low breath. "And if you didn't?" "I didn't," she said simply. "And 2 weeks later, I was outvoted, ousted, and replaced on paper by someone I'd mentored from day one." Ben looked at her in silence, a flicker of quiet admiration in his eyes. "I didn't run away to hide," Lexi said. "I ran because I didn't trust myself anymore. I kept thinking, if someone like me could be that blind, maybe I wasn't as smart as I thought." Ben reached for an apple slice, broke it in two, and handed her half. "You're smart," he said, "but you're also human. That's not weakness, Lexi. That's just life catching up." She took the slice, the corners of her mouth lifting faintly. "You always talk like that?" "Like what?" "Like you've been through the fire and came out wiser, not bitter." Ben's eyes drifted toward the lake. "I've seen what bitterness does. It poisons the good you have left." Lexi looked away, blinking against the sudden sting in her eyes. "I never had a family growing up. Group homes, foster care. I built my company to prove I didn't need anyone. But Emma, she got to you," Ben finished for her. "Yeah," Lexi whispered. "She did." Ben smiled. "She has that effect on people." "I didn't think I had room in my life for something soft," Lexi said. "But now, I don't know how to walk away from it." Ben looked at her then, really looked, and something unspoken passed between them. It wasn't romantic in the fireworks sense. It was quieter, like a door slowly creaking open after years of being shut. "You don't have to walk away," he said. Lexi met his gaze, unsure whether to feel comforted or terrified. They walked back slowly through the woods, sunlight dappling the path. As they neared the cabins, Emma ran out to meet them, arms flailing with excitement. "There's a raccoon under the porch," she shouted. Ben groaned. "Not again." Lexi bent down to Emma's level. "A real raccoon?" Emma nodded solemnly. "He looks sneaky. I named him Harold." "Well, Harold better be gone before nightfall," Ben muttered as he disappeared around the corner. Emma tugged Lexi's hand. "Did you have fun with Daddy?" Lexi smiled. "I did." "Good," Emma said. "I told Harold you're part of our family now. He says hi." Lexi's heart twisted, sweet, aching, and impossibly full. She glanced toward the trees, where Harold may or may not have been lurking. "Well," she whispered, "tell Harold I said thank you." That night, as Lexi lay in bed beneath a worn quilt, smelling faintly of cedar, she stared at the ceiling and replayed every word, every glance, every brush of wind that had touched her that day. There was no turning point, no dramatic shift, just the quiet unfolding of something real. And maybe, just maybe, that was more powerful than any empire she'd ever built. Lexi had just finished sweeping the cabin porch when the sound of tires crunching gravel snapped her out of the quiet rhythm she'd settled into over the past weeks. Visitors were rare this time of year, especially unannounced ones. She squinted toward the parking loop where an unfamiliar black SUV had just pulled in. The vehicle was too sleek, too polished for Pine Hollow. It didn't belong here, not in a place where mud-caked boots outnumbered leather loafers 10 to 1. Ben appeared beside her, wiping his hands on a rag. "You expecting someone?" Lexi shook her head slowly, the hairs on the back of her neck rising. "No." A man stepped out of the SUV. He was tall, tailored, and carried the air of someone used to owning every room he walked into. Lexi's breath caught. "Trevor," she muttered under her breath. Ben looked at her, eyebrows raised. "Friend of yours?" "Former business partner," she said, her voice tight. Trevor spotted her and waved, all charm and false familiarity. "Lexi, there you are." Ben stood still, his posture neutral but firm. Lexi descended the steps slowly, every part of her on edge. "What are you doing here?" she asked as she approached him, arms crossed tightly against her chest. "I've been trying to find you for weeks," he said, flashing his trademark grin. "And then one of our analysts spotted a woman matching your description on a Nature Cam blog. I couldn't believe it, but here you are." Lexi didn't respond. The very air around her seemed to thin. Trevor leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "We need to talk. Alone." She hesitated. Ben took a step forward. "If she wants to, she can. But you don't get to demand anything here." Trevor shot Ben a look of polished disdain, then turned back to Lexi. "I'll wait in the car." He walked away just like that, without asking permission, as if the ground itself owed him grace. Lexi stood frozen for a long moment. Ben didn't say a word, just waited until she finally spoke. "I should talk to him," she said quietly. "This won't go away unless I do." Ben gave a small nod. "I'll keep Emma occupied." She turned to him, her eyes full of unspoken gratitude. "Thank you." The interior of the SUV smelled like money. Leather, cologne, and pressure. Trevor watched her as she slid into the passenger seat. "You look different." "Is that your version of a compliment?" "It's an observation," he said smoothly. "You're not wearing armor anymore." Lexi narrowed her eyes. "Get to the point." Trevor leaned back, folding his hands. "The company's a mess. Investors are jumpy. Your disappearance raised red flags. I've been doing damage control." "I'm not coming back," she said flatly. "Don't be hasty," he replied. "There's still time to spin this in your favor. We can position this as a wellness sabbatical, a rebranding. Come back, take the reins." "Trevor, I'm not coming back." His jaw tightened. "You built this with me. You walked away in the middle of everything. You left me to hold it together." Lexi's voice was calm but razor-edged. "You used my absence to replace me. Don't pretend otherwise." He exhaled through his nose. "You're being emotional." She turned to him slowly. "And you're being a coward." For a moment he didn't speak. Then he shrugged, the mask slipping back on. "You've made your choice," he said. "Just know that people will find out where you are eventually. You won't stay invisible forever." Lexi opened the door. "I'm not trying to be invisible. I'm trying to be real." She stepped out, slamming the door behind her before he could reply. Ben was sitting on the steps when she returned. Emma nowhere in sight, probably at the pond or building snow castles behind the cabins. He looked up at her, scanning her face without prying. "You okay?" Lexi sat beside him, pulling her knees close. "I will be. You don't owe me an explanation, but I'd listen if you wanted to give one." Lexi rested her chin on her knees. "That man, Trevor, was my business partner for 10 years. We co-founded Rowe and Dalton, built it from scratch. He was brilliant, persuasive, ambitious. At first I thought we were aligned, but he always had an angle." Ben nodded slowly. "I didn't see it until too late," she continued. "He offered me a deal, a merger, tied to a proposal. Romantic and corporate all in one neat little bow. When I refused, he took it as betrayal." "Sounds like a power play." "It was, and I let him win because I didn't know who I was without that company." She looked down. "Until I got here." Ben was quiet for a moment. "You still afraid they'll find you?" She shook her head. I'm not hiding. I just needed the noise to stop. He nodded. We all do eventually. That evening, Emma crawled into Lexi's lap while they read by the fire. Her small body curled into Lexi's without hesitation, trusting, safe. You look sad, Emma said. Lexi kissed the top of her head. A little, but better now. Is it because of that man with the shiny car? Lexi blinked. You saw him? Emma nodded. He didn't look nice. Daddy says nice people don't make you feel small. Lexi hugged her tighter. Daddy's a wise man. Later that night, Lexi lay awake staring at the ceiling, her thoughts a slow churn. The visit from Trevor had shaken something loose. Not fear, but clarity. She no longer wanted to return to her old life, but she also couldn't pretend her past didn't exist. Somehow, she had to find a way to bridge both worlds, to be the woman she was becoming without discarding the one she had been. She didn't know how, but for the first time in years, she believed she could try. It started with a whisper, just a hush in the trees, a breeze brushing through Pine Hollow like the forest exhaling. But by late afternoon, the wind had picked up. Clouds rolled in thick and low, and the air turned sharp with tension. Ben stepped outside the maintenance shed, eyes scanning the sky. He knew the signs. Mountain storms didn't knock politely. They barged in, quick and furious. Lexi, he called toward the cabins. We've got weather coming. She emerged from the wood shed, cheeks pink from hauling firewood. I noticed. It got dark fast. Yeah, Ben said, already checking the latches on nearby windows. We've had storms like this before. They roll in hard. I need to secure the grounds. You stay with Emma in the main lodge just in case it gets rough. I can help, she said without hesitation. He paused. You sure? Lexi nodded, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. I'm not made of glass. Ben offered a half smile. Didn't think you were. Together they moved fast. Lexi ran extra blankets to the cabins while Ben cleared the path to the storm cellar. Emma helped for a while, mostly by offering encouraging commentary and dragging her stuffed bunny around as moral support. By the time the first crack of thunder split the sky, all three were inside the main lodge. An old building with thick log walls, a stone fireplace, and enough character to withstand just about anything. Ben lit the fire, Lexi checked the emergency lanterns, and Emma set up a makeshift storm camp with pillows and flashlights under the dining table. Do storms always come this fast? Lexi asked, standing by the window as rain began to streak across the glass. Spring in the mountains, Ben said. She doesn't ease in. She just shows up. Lightning flashed, followed quickly by a deep, rolling rumble. Emma let out a tiny squeak and bolted toward Lexi, burying her face in her side. Lexi bent down, wrapping her arms around her without a word. You're okay, sweetheart, she murmured. Just loud sky noises. Emma peeked up. Daddy calls it nature's temper tantrum. Well, Lexi said with a soft smile, someone needs a nap. The storm raged for hours. The power flickered, then died entirely. Outside, trees groaned in the wind, and the rain hammered the roof like a drumline. Inside, the fire roared, casting flickering shadows across the walls. Emma eventually dozed off in Lexi's lap, curled under a quilt like a kitten. Ben watched from across the room, something quiet and full flickering behind his eyes. She feels safe with you, he said softly. Lexi looked down at the little girl sleeping against her. She makes me feel safe too. They didn't speak for a while. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was alive, like the space between breaths when something important is about to be said. Finally, Lexi glanced over at him. What are we doing, Ben? He blinked. What do you mean? This, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Us. Me. Staying. Emma calling me mom when she thinks I'm not listening. Ben took a breath, then crossed the room and sat beside her. The firelight lit the side of his face, highlighting the lines earned from years of grief and grit. I don't know what we're doing, he admitted, but I know what it feels like. Lexi turned to face him, heart pounding. And what does it feel like? Like peace, he said, like hope sneaking back in after I thought it was gone for good. She closed her eyes for a moment. I'm not who you think I am, Ben. You keep saying that, he replied gently, but I think you are exactly who you've shown me to be. Kind, strong, stubborn in the best way. You could have run the moment that man showed up, and you didn't. I wanted to, but you didn't, he said again, and the steadiness in his voice nearly undid her. She looked up at him, her defenses slowly unraveling. You scare me, she said. I know, he replied just as softly. You scare me too. Their eyes met, and something shifted, something quiet and certain. It wasn't the kind of romance built on grand gestures. It was the kind built slowly, layer by layer, in storm shelters and quiet glances, over marshmallows and muddy boots. Ben leaned in, not rushed, not demanding, just a moment suspended in firelight and thunder. Lexi met him halfway. The kiss was gentle, warm, filled with everything neither of them had dared say aloud. It tasted of possibility, of second chances and what-ifs that no longer felt so far away. When they pulled apart, neither spoke for a moment. Then Ben glanced down at the child sleeping between them. We should probably move her to the cot, he said. Lexi smiled. Let her be. She's fine right where she is. Later, as the storm finally waned and the wind softened into tired sighs, Lexi stood at the back window, watching the last of the lightning flicker on the horizon. Ben came up behind her, quiet and steady. You okay? He asked. She nodded. I think I'm starting to be. He rested a hand on her shoulder. This place, it has a way of healing people. She turned to him. Maybe, or maybe it's the people in it. Ben smiled. Maybe it's both. Outside, the trees stood tall and dripping, washed clean by the storm. Inside, in a cabin warmed by fire and trust, something new had taken root. Not rushed, not perfect, but real. And sometimes, real was the most miraculous thing of all. The air the next morning held that rare electric stillness that followed a storm. Everything was brighter somehow, cleaner. Sunlight glinted off dew-drenched pine needles, and the lingering scent of rain clung to the earth like a memory that didn't want to be forgotten. Lexi stood at the edge of the clearing, coffee mug cradled in both hands, watching Emma chase a squirrel around a soggy swing set. The child's laughter rang out like wind chimes. Innocent, free, untouched by the heaviness Lexi felt pressing on her chest. She hadn't slept. Not really. Her body had rested, sure, curled beneath a quilt in the quiet glow of embers. But her mind had spun in circles, replaying the kiss, the storm, the truth she still hadn't told. It had gone too far. She had let herself believe she could exist here without consequence. Be this Lexi without the weight of Alexis Rowe. But it wasn't real. Not yet. Not until the truth was laid bare, no matter the cost. By late morning, Ben was out back chopping wood. Lexi watched him for a moment through the window, his sleeves rolled to the elbow, his shoulders rising and falling with each swing. He worked like a man who'd made peace with solitude, but didn't fear connection. She stepped outside. He glanced up and smiled. Hey, want to take a turn? Great stress relief. Lexi managed a weak smile. I need to talk to you. Ben paused, sensing the shift in her tone. He set the axe aside and brushed his hands on his jeans. Okay. They sat on the back steps of the cabin, overlooking the tree line where a few patches of snow still clung to the shadows. Lexi took a breath. I should have told you sooner, but I was afraid that if I said it out loud, I'd lose what I found here. Ben waited, patient, present. My real name is Alexis Rowe, she said. I'm not just some burnout traveler trying to escape a failed relationship. I'm, or was, the CEO of Rowe and Dalton Hotels. I built it, from nothing. Ben blinked but didn't speak. I walked away after my business partner, Trevor, the man who showed up here, tried to push me into a merger I didn't believe in. He used personal leverage, manipulation. When I refused, the board sided with him. I lost everything, not financially, but the trust, the identity, the life I thought I had built. Ben looked down at his hands. So when you came here, I was trying to disappear, she admitted. Not forever, just long enough to remember who I was without the title. I didn't plan to stay. I didn't plan to fall in love with this place, or with you. The words hung there, heavier than she expected. Ben's brow furrowed, not in anger, but in the quiet contemplation of someone turning over something fragile in his hands. I knew you were hiding something, he said finally. The way you paused when I asked about your past. The way you looked at your phone like it held a ghost. Lexi blinked, startled. You knew? I didn't know what, but I knew why. People only run that far when something deep breaks. She looked down, throat tight. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Ben was quiet for a moment, then asked, what are you planning to do now? Lexi hesitated. I don't know. Part of me wants to go back, confront it all, prove I'm not running. But another part doesn't want to leave here, doesn't want to lose this. Ben nodded slowly, then looked out toward the woods. I've learned something out here in the trees. Life doesn't ask for perfect, just honest. Lexi blinked. Are you angry? I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little stung, he said, but not because of who you are, because I started hoping you might stay, and now I don't know if that's still true. It could be, Lexi said, voice trembling. I want it to be. Ben didn't speak. His silence wasn't cold. It was protective. A man guarding a heart that had been broken before. That evening, Emma sensed the change. Lexi helped her with her homework, but the warmth in her voice was a degree lower, the smile not quite reaching her eyes. Emma looked up from her notebook. Did Daddy say something mean? Lexi blinked. What? No, sweetheart. Emma frowned. You look like the people in movies right before they say goodbye. Lexi felt her chest tighten. Sometimes grown-ups get scared, Emma. Not of monsters, but of losing things that matter. Emma leaned forward, small hands on Lexi's cheeks. You're not going to go away, are you? Lexi felt her throat close. She didn't know how to answer. I don't want to. Then don't, Emma said simply. Stay. I like you here. That night, after Emma was asleep in the lodge quiet, Lexi found Ben on the porch, staring up at the stars. She stepped beside him, the silence stretching between them, like the space between constellations. I don't want to run, she said softly, but I don't want to lie either. Ben looked at her, the moonlight etching the sharp edges of his face in silver. I didn't fall in love with a billionaire, he said. I fell in love with the woman who made my daughter laugh, who fixed the back fence without being asked, who let herself belong here before she believed she could. Lexi's breath caught. You love me? He smiled. I do. She closed the distance between them, laying her head on his shoulder. And I love you, she whispered, no matter what name I carry. Ben wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. Not like someone who had all the answers, but like someone who had finally found something worth holding on to. The truth hadn't broken them. It had set them free. The letter sat on the kitchen table, sealed with a single piece of plain tape. No name on the front, no flourish. Just the quiet finality of handwriting penned by someone who had made up her mind. Ben stared at it for a long while before touching it. It had been 2 days since Lexi left Pine Hollow. She hadn't said goodbye. Not in words, at least. Only in the way she moved through that last morning. Quietly, almost reverently, like someone taking a final look at something they didn't believe they deserved to keep. He had awakened to find Emma still asleep, and Lexi gone. Her cabin was empty, except for a folded blanket on the bed, a half-burned candle on the sill, and the note on the table. The silence she left behind was deafening. Ben finally opened the envelope. Inside were 2 letters, one addressed to him, the other to Emma, scrawled in block letters, carefully printed like someone who wasn't sure she'd earned the right to be remembered. He opened his first. Ben, I never thought I'd find a place where I felt human again, where I could laugh without calculating, sleep without replaying headlines, and look a child in the eye without fearing I would disappoint her. You gave me that. You gave me the gift of a quiet morning, the honesty of chopped wood, the miracle of a second chance I didn't know I was still allowed to hope for. But I also know that love, real love, doesn't hide. And I can't stay here pretending I don't have a past to face. I need to go back and reclaim my name, not because I want the power again, but because I want to make sure it's not used to hurt others. If I don't come back, it's not because I've forgotten you. It's because the fight lasted longer than I planned. But you and Emma, you'll always be with me. You're the legacy I didn't expect, and the one I cherish the most. Thank you for saving me, for seeing me, for letting me be yours, even for a moment. Love, Lexi. Ben folded the letter slowly. It was creased now, softer from his touch, but somehow heavier in his hand than when he opened it. He didn't read Emma's letter. He set it aside for when she was ready. Emma took the news better than he expected. She went to fix her old life? She asked, chewing thoughtfully on a slice of toast. Ben nodded, keeping his voice steady. She had some things she needed to make right. Emma considered this. Will she come back? I don't know, Ben said honestly. Emma looked down at her plate. I hope she does, but even if she doesn't, she still counts. She still counts? He echoed, puzzled. Emma nodded. In our family, she made it better. That doesn't stop just because she's not here. Ben swallowed the lump in his throat. No, sweetheart, it doesn't. The days stretched long and slow after that. The snow melted into thick mud trails. Spring crept in on the breeze, bringing daffodils near the mailbox and small green shoots around the cabin foundations. Ben kept working. He built a new bench by the lake, repaired the broken step on Lexi's old porch, and fixed up the greenhouse he'd meant to restore for years. Emma helped. She insisted they plant Lexi's flowers near the kitchen window. Marigolds and lavender, the ones Lexi had mentioned loving. They placed a tiny wooden sign in the soil with her name painted in purple glitter. Each evening, they'd sit on the porch and watch the stars come out. Sometimes Ben would catch Emma glancing toward the road, hopeful. He never stopped glancing either. A month passed, then another. No word. Until one morning, as Ben was hauling a delivery from the post office, the clerk handed him a padded envelope. It had no return address, but he knew. Inside was a photograph and a handwritten update. The photo showed Lexi, Alexis, standing in front of a room full of press. She looked different. Not polished like before, not armored, just real. Her hair was pulled back in a simple braid, her blazer rumpled like she'd been working long hours. But her eyes were steady. Behind her was a new banner. Not Roe and Dalton, just Roe Initiatives. He unfolded the letter. I've launched something new, not a hotel empire, a foundation. We're buying old properties and restoring them into community lodges, education centers, veteran retreats, healing places, places like Pine Hollow. We just broke ground on the first one. I gave a speech. I mentioned you, not by name, but by spirit. Sometimes the greatest legacies are built in silence, under trees, in the heart of a child who still believes in good people. That was for you, for Emma. I'm not done here. But when I am, if the porch light is still on, I'll find my way home. Ben read it twice, then a third time. That evening, he brought out Emma's letter. She opened it carefully like it was something sacred. Inside was a drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a pine tree. One was labeled Emma, the second Daddy, and the third had a heart on the chest and wore Lexi's signature boots. Dear Emma, you're the bravest person I've ever met, and the kindest, and the most powerful, because you believe love matters more than anything else. You taught me that. Don't stop making snow frogs. Don't stop singing off key, and don't stop loving people who make mistakes. I love you. Emma folded the letter and held it close. Daddy? Yeah, baby. Can we keep the porch light on at night? Ben looked at her, then smiled. We'll leave it on every night. And so they did. Each evening, as dusk settled over Pine Hollow and the first stars blinked open above the pines, a soft golden light glowed from the porch of the Carter cabin. It was not a beacon of longing. It was a promise. That home would still be here. When the fight was done, when the heart was ready, when love came walking back through the trees. Alexis Rose stepped onto the stage with no script, no entourage, and no title before her name. The ballroom was filled with suits, media crews, and eyes that had once worshipped her, or tried to control her. The Roe and Dalton annual summit had once been hers. Now she was just a guest, or so they thought. The spotlight glared down. The room hushed. She didn't flinch. Thank you for coming, she began, voice even but resolute. I'm Alexis Roe. I co-founded this company 16 years ago. I wrote its mission. I poured my life into it. And when I stepped away, I thought I'd lost it all. She paused. No teleprompter. No PR team. Just truth. But stepping away turned out to be the most honest thing I've ever done. There was a murmur across the crowd. Trevor Dalton shifted uncomfortably in the front row. I'm not here to reclaim a title, she continued. I'm here to reclaim a purpose. She gestured toward the screen behind her, where a new logo flickered to life. The Row Initiative, soft blue and green, like sky meeting earth. It's time we do more than build hotels for the elite. It's time we build places where healing happens, places that welcome veterans, single parents, first responders, people who give everything and get so little in return. A few investors leaned in. Others looked skeptical. She'd expected that. She clicked to the next slide. Photos of Pine Hollow, Emma planting flowers, Ben splitting wood, the swing set under a snow-laced tree. This is where I remembered what leadership really means. Not corner offices or press headlines, but showing up, listening, creating something that makes people feel whole again. A pause. Her eyes met Trevor's. I've liquidated my private assets. I've purchased 5 underutilized rural properties. The Row Initiative is turning them into community centers. They won't bear the Dalton name, and they'll never be for profit. Trevor stood abruptly. You're hijacking our platform? I was your platform, she snapped, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. You used my absence to consolidate power. But what you forgot is that my name, my legacy, isn't yours to define. Gasps rose from the room. Alexis straightened. To the board, you will receive formal notice of my withdrawal from all remaining Row and Dalton interests. My lawyers will ensure a clean break. I want nothing to do with a company that sacrifices values for valuation. She stepped back from the podium. And to those who still believe business can be humane, healing, and honest, you know where to find me. Applause was hesitant at first, then stronger. A few rose to their feet. Not many, but enough. She didn't need them all. She just needed to know she wasn't alone. Outside the conference hall, her hands shook slightly. Not from fear, but release. The door behind her opened. A young reporter chased after her, recorder in hand. Ms. Rowe, just one question. What inspired this change in direction? Alexis paused. A 7-year-old girl with glitter on her boots and more wisdom in her pinky than most of us have in a lifetime. The reporter blinked. Is that a metaphor? Alexis smiled. No, her name is Emma, and she taught me what home really means. That night back in her modest apartment, Alexis kicked off her heels, curled up on the couch with a takeout container, and let silence wrap around her like an old friend. No calls, no obligations. Just the hum of streetlights and the faint echo of her own heartbeat, steady and calm. On the coffee table sat a folder, the legal papers finalizing her detachment from Row and Dalton. Everything she'd built, released. It should have hurt, but it didn't, because she hadn't lost herself. She'd reclaimed herself, and the proof was blooming in the dirt of Pine Hollow, in lavender sprigs planted by a girl who'd once called her Mommy without hesitation. Alexis opened her laptop and clicked into her inbox. Dozens of emails from reporters, donors, activists. She flagged a few for follow-up, then stopped at a message with the subject line, Porch lights still on. Her breath caught. It was from Ben. We saw the speech. Emma made me replay it twice. She made popcorn. We're proud of you. And yes, the porch light is still on. Whenever you're ready. She stared at the screen for a long moment, blinking back tears she hadn't allowed herself to shed in weeks. Then quietly she clicked, Reply. Over the next few weeks, the Row Initiative gained traction. Investors reached out, not the ones seeking fast returns, but the ones who believed in legacy over luxury. Volunteers signed up. Towns submitted requests to host future sites. But none of that compared to the small envelope that arrived one morning, handwritten in purple marker, smudged with what looked like peanut butter. Inside was a drawing of a cabin, 3 stick figures, and a smiling raccoon. Underneath it, in Emma's unmistakable handwriting, We miss you. Harold does too. Alexis placed it on her fridge, right next to the Row Initiative's mission statement, because in her heart, they were the same thing. 2 nights later, as she walked through the city after a long meeting, Alexis paused under a street lamp, phone in hand. She pulled up the train schedule to Oregon. Her fingers hovered. Then she booked the ticket. One way. The morning Lexi returned to Pine Hollow, the mountains were veiled in a silver mist, soft and welcoming, as if the land itself had been waiting. She stepped off the last train with a single duffel slung over her shoulder and boots that still bore the scuffs of city sidewalks. The platform was quiet. No fanfare, no reporters, no eyes that expected anything from her. Just the whistle of the wind and the scent of pine. She hadn't called ahead. Part of her feared she might talk herself out of coming if she did. The other part, the deeper, braver part, wanted to see what waited for her when nothing was guaranteed. A man, a child, a place that had once wrapped itself around her without asking questions. She had left to reclaim her name, but she had returned for something far greater, to offer her heart. By mid-morning, Lexi reached the familiar dirt road that wound through the woods like a memory. Her boots sank softly into patches of mud and moss, the same way they had that first day, when she was just a woman who'd slipped down a cliff and landed in the arms of a man who'd never asked who she was. When she reached the edge of the clearing, her steps slowed. There it was, the Carter cabin, same sloping roof, same crooked shutters. But something was different now. Marigolds bloomed under the windows, bright and unashamed. A wooden sign carved with the word, "Welcome," hung near the steps. And on the porch, lit even in the daylight, glowed a single bulb, the porch light, still on. Her throat tightened. The screen door creaked open before she could knock. And there he was, Ben. No shock, no question. Just a breath. A flicker of something behind his eyes that might have been relief, or something far deeper. "Hey," he said simply. Lexi tried to speak but couldn't. She just nodded. He stepped forward, took her duffel, and set it gently inside the door. Then he turned back to her, hands in his pockets, like a man still unsure if this was a dream or not. "You came back," he said. "I didn't know if I would," she admitted, "but then I realized I didn't want to be anywhere else." Ben studied her for a moment. "And the world you left behind?" "Still spinning," she said with a faint smile. "But I'm not chasing it anymore. I've built what I needed to build. Now I want to build something that lasts." He stepped closer. "With me?" "With you," she said. "If you'll still have me." Ben reached out and took her hand. His touch was warm and steady. "I never stopped," he said. They sat on the porch steps for a long time, side by side. No hurry in their movements. No need to fill the silence. The wind rustled the pines. A hawk circled high above. Somewhere nearby, a squirrel scolded them for sitting too close to its stash. Lexi laughed softly. "Even the forest remembers me," Ben chuckled. "Well, you did name a raccoon, Harold." Her smile faded into something softer. "Where's Emma?" "School. She'll be home in an hour." Lexi's heart skipped. "Does she still talk about me?" Ben looked over. "Every day." Lexi bit her bottom lip. "I wrote her, but I didn't know if it was enough." "She kept your letter on her nightstand," he said. "The drawings taped to the fridge. Harold's nameplate is still under the porch." Tears welled in her eyes, unbidden and real. "I thought I'd ruined it. By leaving." "You didn't," Ben said quietly. "You just needed to be ready." An hour later, the sound of the school bus crunching up the gravel path sent Lexi's heart into her throat. She stood at the edge of the porch, hands trembling, as Emma bounded off the bus, her backpack flopping behind her. Then she stopped. Their eyes met across the clearing. Emma dropped her bag and ran. Lexi knelt just in time to catch her. "Mommy, Lexi!" Emma cried, wrapping her arms around her neck. Lexi choked back a sob, clutching her tight. "I missed you so much." "Punny, you came back," Emma whispered. "I told Harold you would." Lexi laughed through her tears. "Well, Harold is very wise." They sat there on the steps, arms wrapped tight around each other, as the spring sun dipped lower behind the trees. That evening, they had dinner on the porch. Grilled cheese, tomato soup, and marshmallows roasted over the fire pit Emma had helped Ben rebuild. The sky turned gold, then rose, then the deep velvet of twilight. Lexi watched Ben move through the cabin, Emma humming a tune as she sorted her crayons beside them. She took a deep breath. "I've been thinking," she said. Ben looked up. "I don't want to just live here. I want to contribute. Maybe we could open a retreat program, healing weekends for single parents, veterans, anyone who needs a place to reset." Ben raised an eyebrow, impressed. "You serious?" "I've got the funding. The vision and the heart. She looked at him. But I'd want to do it with you. Together. He smiled slowly. You always did think big. She leaned in. You said once this place had a way of healing people. It does. Then let's share it. Ben nodded. Let's build it. Later that night, as Emma drifted to sleep beneath a quilt that smelled of lavender and wood smoke, Lexi stepped outside alone. She looked out over Pine Hollow, this place that had caught her when she fell, held her while she healed, and now welcomed her as something new. Not a runaway, not a stranger, but someone home. The porch light glowed behind her, but she no longer needed it to find her way. She was already there. By late spring, Pine Hollow pulsed with life. Wildflowers spilled across the open fields in golden waves. The air was thick with the hum of bees, the rustle of leaves, the laughter of children chasing each other barefoot down the gravel paths between cabins. And in the center of it all stood Lexi, hands in the dirt, knees stained with soil, hair tied back in a loose braid, as she gently placed the final plant into the new garden bed outside the renovated community lodge. It hadn't taken long for her vision to take root. Once word got out that Alexis Rowe had returned not to rebuild a hotel chain, but to grow something far more enduring, the offers came pouring in, but she accepted only what was needed. No grants that came with strings, no headlines, no partners seeking brand leverage, just tools, lumber, volunteers, and heart. The Rowe Initiative was alive, and Pine Hollow was its heart. The old maintenance barn had been transformed into a sunlit gathering space. High ceilings with exposed beams, reclaimed wood tables, and windows that opened wide to the meadow. Ben had overseen the work with his usual quiet diligence, teaching Lexi how to sand and seal wood, how to dig post holes without throwing out her back, how to use a level properly. She never did quite get that one right. They built everything together, not just structures, but trust, rhythm, a new life day by day. Emma, of course, had appointed herself junior supervisor, issuing daily reports on squirrel activity, wildflower blooming patterns, and Harold's frequent disappearances under cabin 3. She's serious about that raccoon, Lexi had told Ben one evening, laughing as Emma proudly delivered her 10th drawing of Harold in various hats. She's serious about you, Ben had replied softly. So am I. Lexi stood now at the edge of the new garden, wiping sweat from her brow, watching as a small group of local families arrived for the weekend program. Single parents, widows, veterans with quiet eyes and worn hands. She greeted each one personally, offering warm smiles and a plate of fresh lemon muffins Emma had insisted they bake that morning. There was no pomp, no press, just people. That was how Lexi wanted it. Looks like a full weekend, Ben said, joining her. She nodded. It feels good, like we're doing something that actually matters. He looked at her, his hand brushing against hers. You are. They walked together through the site as guests settled into cabins. Children explored the woods, and a gentle breeze stirred the chimes hanging from the trees. Funny, Lexi said. I used to measure success by quarterly growth and Forbes features. Now it's the way someone breathes easier after a few nights here. Ben glanced toward the fire pit area, where a single mom with 2 sons sat on a log, tears in her eyes as she watched them laugh for the first time in weeks. That looks like success to me, he said. Lexi followed his gaze and felt something inside her settle, like a seed finally understanding it had always been meant to bloom. Later that afternoon, Emma burst into the lodge kitchen, her cheeks flushed. Mommy, Lexi, come quick! Lexi dropped her spoon. What happened? There's a baby deer stuck behind the tool shed. Lexi and Ben exchanged a glance before following Emma out the back, where a fawn, barely old enough to stand, wobbled near the edge of the woodshed. Its leg had slipped between 2 stacked pallets. Lexi knelt slowly, murmuring soft reassurances as she reached for the fawn. The tiny creature blinked up at her, its body trembling. You're okay, she whispered, sliding one hand under its belly and gently lifting. Ben helped guide the leg free, and within seconds the fawn sprang toward the woods, hesitant but unharmed. Emma clapped. You saved it, Lexi smiled. He just needed a little help. That's all. As they watched the fawn disappear into the trees, Ben turned to her. Funny how the world keeps giving us metaphors. She laughed. I think it's trying to make sure we're paying attention. That evening, a gentle gathering circled the fire pit. Guests shared stories, roasted marshmallows, and sang off-key songs Emma had taught them. Someone passed around a guitar. Someone else handed Lexi a cup of cider and thanked her, quietly, sincerely, as if she'd built them a sanctuary with her bare hands. Ben slid onto the log beside her. "Think we're ready?" he asked. "For what?" "For what comes next." She smiled, watching Emma twirl under the stars. "I think we already started." Ben reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Lexi stared at it. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious." She opened it. Inside was a silver band, simple and elegant, engraved with a pine tree and a single word: home. "I didn't want something flashy," he said. "I just wanted something true." Lexi's throat tightened. "I left everything I thought I needed, and somehow ended up with more than I ever dreamed." Ben took her hand. "So, what do you say?" She leaned in, kissed him softly, and whispered, "Yes." That night, long after the fire died down and the guests had gone to bed, Lexi sat alone on the front porch of the cabin, her cabin now, barefoot, wrapped in a blanket, stars glittering above. She thought of who she used to be. She thought of who she was now, not less, not someone new, but someone whole. Behind her, the porch light glowed, this time not waiting for someone to return, but shining for those still on their way. A year had passed, 12 full turns of the moon since Alexis Rowe, Lexi to those who truly knew her, first stumbled into Pine Hollow, half broken, half lost, and completely unaware that she was about to be found. Now the sun rose over the clearing with a golden warmth that soaked into the cabins, into the trees, into the very soil that had borne witness to so much quiet transformation. Spring had arrived again, but this time it brought more than flowers and thawed trails. It brought celebration. At the heart of the meadow stood the newly restored community lodge, draped in soft garlands of wildflowers and pine boughs. Rows of simple wooden benches faced a handmade arbor. Strings of fairy lights wove through the trees, catching the late afternoon sun like dewdrops in motion. Ben Carter stood in front of a cabin mirror, adjusting the collar of a crisp white shirt, a rare sight for a man who usually lived in flannel. Emma peeked in, her hands clutching a tiny bouquet of daisies and her curls pulled back with glittery barrettes. "You ready, Daddy?" she asked, eyes bright with excitement. Ben turned, smiling. "I should be asking you that." Emma giggled. "I've been ready since last week. Harold and I practiced the walk." Ben raised an eyebrow. "Is he coming?" Emma nodded solemnly. "He's under the porch. Moral support." Ben crouched, looked her in the eye. "You know this isn't just about me and Lexi, right?" Emma nodded again. "It's about us, all three." He kissed her forehead. "That's right." Across the way, Lexi stood barefoot in the small cabin where it had all begun. The walls were still the same weathered pine, but now they were adorned with hand-drawn pictures, dried lavender, and a framed photo of her, Emma, and Ben, taken beneath the autumn leaves. She wore a simple ivory dress, linen, flowy, comfortable, and held no bouquet, no veil. Just a quiet steadiness in her chest. In the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because of the dress or the way her hair curled at the ends, but because for the first time in years, she saw someone at peace. Behind her, Ruthie, one of the veterans from the first retreat, adjusted the sash on Lexi's dress with practiced hands. "Nervous?" Ruthie asked, her voice gravelly but kind. "No," Lexi said. "Strangely, not at all." Ruthie smiled. "That's how you know it's right." Guests began arriving near sunset. Not the rich and powerful from Lexi's old life, but the people who had touched hers, neighbors, retreat guests, local farmers, old friends who had become new family. No one wore tuxedos. No one clutched phones. They brought hand-picked flowers, homemade desserts, and open hearts. As the sky turned to amber and the last rays of sun brushed the pines, Emma walked down the path first, daisies in hand, with the utmost seriousness of a 7-year-old on a mission. Ben followed moments later, his gaze never leaving Lexi as she stepped into view. The crowd hushed. Lexi's bare feet touched the soft grass, and every step felt like a homecoming. Ben met her at the arbor, eyes shimmering. "You look like a dream," he whispered. "You look like everything I never thought I deserved." she whispered back. Ruthie officiated with the steadiness of a soldier and the warmth of a friend. The vows were not long nor polished, just real. Lexi spoke first. I spent most of my life chasing a version of success that kept me moving, always just out of reach of anything true. And then I fell, literally, and you caught me, not with hands but with patience, with space to become, with love that asked for nothing but honesty. You didn't just save me, you taught me how to stay. Ben's voice trembled slightly when it was his turn. I never thought I'd love again. I thought the part of me that knew how had burned up in the fire that took everything else. But then you came, with your guarded heart and your stubborn grace, and reminded me that some things grow back stronger after the burn. I love you, Lexi, not in spite of where you came from, because of it. Emma handed them the rings. They were simple bands, each etched with a single pine tree and the date they first met. Small symbols of something that had never needed grandeur to be sacred. When Ruthie finally said, "You may kiss your bride," the clearing erupted into cheers, laughter, applause, and a distinctly celebratory bark from somewhere under the porch. "Harold approves," Emma declared. Lexi laughed into Ben's arms. As dusk melted into night, the meadow filled with the sounds of music and clinking glasses. Children chased fireflies. Adults swayed slowly near the bonfire. Lexi stood beneath the twinkling lights, her head resting against Ben's chest as they moved together in rhythm, saying nothing because nothing needed to be said. Later, after the crowd thinned and the last lanterns were lit, Lexi walked alone toward the cabin that had once sheltered her as a stranger. It still stood there, quiet and glowing, like a secret whispered between friends. She stepped inside. The fire was low, the quilt folded at the foot of the bed just as she remembered. She knelt down and placed a small wooden box beneath the windowsill. Inside the box was her Rowan Dalton name badge, her resignation letter, a folded photo of the lodge now thriving just beyond the trees, and the first letter Emma had ever drawn for her. She closed the lid gently and whispered, "Thank you," to the walls, the wood, the echoes of who she used to be. Then she turned off the light. Not because she was leaving, but because the light had moved. It now lived wherever she did. We hope this story touched your heart as deeply as it touched ours. Now we'd love to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let us know. Your thoughts, your favorite moment, or just a simple hello. We read everyone, and it means the world to us. And if stories like this bring you comfort or inspiration, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new one. Thank you for spending your time with us. Until next time, take care, stay kind, and keep believing in the quiet magic of love and second chances.